Greetings! Miyazaki hasn't hired me yet, but when he does, I'll be ready. Welcome one and all to the final episode of our 3-part series, where I designed a character for Elden Ring Night Rain. Previously we developed small-scale thumbnails and sketches and then fleshed them out, making the framework for our fleshy rendering that we will be doing on this episode. So now comes the arduous process of fully rendering our character and making a pretty picture. So I guess this means I have to show you my process for painting pretty pictures then. Alrighty, let's get started. Last episode, you all voted for this colour scheme here. Excellent choice, by the way. So I will be starting with the line work and the base flat colours. So as you can see me doing on screen, I am now adding shadows in a different layer below my line art, but in front of my flats. This is a process called ambient occlusion. If done right, it adds a cool effect making your image look 3D, but it also allows me to not have to paint as much. Painting is tedious. Pick up that pencil, little bro. Anyway, this basically involves me painting the shadows and all the small cracks and crevices with a soft brush. But I also like to use this cool little brush by Mark Brunet to speed up the process. I ended up using the canvas textured version because I like the texture it creates. And then at the end, I'll add a small gradient from the top to bottom. Next step is to add some gradient maps. Gradient maps are an easy way to add a lot of extra vibrant colours. In this case, I decided to add some more orange tones and the lighter colours, creating a more warm blend of colours which will be visually pleasing to the eye. Then the next step is to add a layer over the top of everything and start blending the lines, shadows and midtones all together. In this step, I'm basically just hiding all the lines and accentuating certain things here and there. Okay, I'm not sure if I made that last bit super clear to you all, so I'm going to say it again, this time in real time. Ooh. What I'm doing is I am blending these lines into these shadows, doing it in a very specific way, using a lot of sort of hatch shading, okay? You sort of see these lines then blur into the shadows, and then that's the entirety of this whole step. I'm not doing anything else, I'm just making sure the darks of my image flow well and are cohesive and start to look like something that I'll be proud of. And then in the next step, I sort of do the opposite, but with more lighter colours and things and whatnot. More about that in a minute. So now, you see, I'm actually photo bashing because I am a professional concept artist that uses many cool textures and photos and things. And anyway, I am using a texture photo to give myself something to work on. I'm adding in a photo, I'm changing the blending mode to overlay or multiply or screen, whichever works best, and I'm giving the underlying material or the object that I'm adding it to some texture. And I'm not just leaving it there, I am now painting over the top of it and sort of rehashing and retranslating it to the way that I want to do it. You'll see later on I am still going to paint over this, and it is not the final thing, it's just another thing to work on here, as you can see with the rock behind his head. You'll see later on that gives me a lot of cool shapes and colours and things to sort of work on. And of course now you can see me add in another layer, which I've called the refine layer. Sort of where I add not quite a highlight layer, but it is a lighter color, sort of now go further on top of this and add actual highlights, whereas this is sort of not quite a highlight, but it's on the way there, if that makes sense. I've sort of explained that in a roundabout way, but it's getting to the point where I'm adding highlights. So this is where it sort of starts to look finished, it looks a little more refined, hence why it's called the refined layer. I can now push and pull certain things. You can now see the image start to take on this cool 3D effect. And then of course later on I can even push things even more than they are now. Sort of adding this sort of light layering effect. It's an onion. I am crafting Shrek every time I make a drawing or painting. So obviously I started with the sketch, then the flats, and then the shadows, and now then I was refining the midtones with the shadows, and now I'm adding the second last cherry, not quite the full cherry, but adding the whipped cream, if you will, adding a little more three-dimensionality to it, and everything's in layers. You can see that my process is a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, add even more, and then eventually you'll get to the final product. And then next step is to, of course, add highlights. And now, of course, we are adding the final, well, almost final highlights. I've still got to add backlighting, background lighting, all these other things, but these are basically the final touches on the piece without putting it in an environment. Of course, now I have to put it in an environment to get the final lighting situation figured out. And of course, that's what I did. You can see me drawing in the background now. It's obviously starting with some stones, some plants, rocks, sort of getting the first major bit, then obviously the background planes, thinking about what I'm going to do, where I'm going to place certain things. I wanted the Erd tree actually behind him, and that would cause some sort of really cool cast shadow, and a nod to the fact that it's an Elden Ring character. I thought that could be quite nice. As for the technique which I will use to illustrate my background, nothing overly fancy. I've got 3 different layers: the foreground, the middle ground, and of course the background and sky. And now it's the same process as with the character. It's getting all the flat colors, deciding on what values, what colors complement each other, and then from there I start looking at shadows, so doing the ambient occlusions and cast shadows and all those things, and then obviously adding the refine layer, sort of layering it up as I go. It's a process that's very easy to sort of focus on one thing at a time. You can break everything up into bite-sized pieces, and it helps it not get so overwhelming. And also, I'll do this step for each layer, the middle ground, the background as well. Luckily, in terms of background, I only really have to focus on the outer edges and corners of this illustration. I don't really need to fill it up with anything in the middle, because it's not the centerpiece. The centerpiece is the character, and the character is blocking a large portion of the background anyway. Of course, another cheap trick is that because the background is so far away, there's going to be a lot of fog, a sort of luminescence type of thing going on. Sort of, you're not going to see all of that. It's going to be phased out by sort of atmospheric fog and whatnot. And then adding a gradient map on the sky, get some cool colors, because Elden Ring Night Rain has some really interesting skyboxes, and that could be really fun to play with. And then as for technique of drawing the Erd tree, I was very unsure of which I was going to do this. My thought process was to draw some line art and then change the color of that and make it a lighter color and sort of have it glowing, and then sort of fill in a little bit with flats, but I don't know if I realistically pulled it off, but it's conveying what I need it to. I don't know if I'd necessarily do it this way again, but it illustrates the point that it's the Erd tree, and the Erd tree is very bright, very glowing, got lots of floral type shapes and whatnot. So in the end, I can't be too picky. And then that's most of the background. One thing I forgot to record, because I'm a fool, is I did not do the backlighting and whatnot. As you can see there, the backlight adds that pop and that vigor. And as you can see, I named him Boulder Sacks, or Ball Sacks for short. Yes, I know, I'm hilarious. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That completes part 3 of our 3-part series where I designed a character for Elden Ring Night Rain. I hope you've all enjoyed this journey with me so far. Let me know in the comments below what I should draw next. Till next time, adventurer.